Hello everyone and welcome back to another deck guide, this time featuring the Ice Barrier archetype. This is a water-based synchro archetype that is focused around having a bunch of monsters with little annoying floodgate type effects. Not everyone is necessarily going to lock your opponent out of the game, but they do make the entire thing a nightmare to try and play around. If that kind of sadistic playstyle sounds fun to you, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, we have Revealer of the Ice Barrier. So she is our best starter, and her annoying effect is that if you control her and any other Ice Barrier monster, your opponent cannot tribute summon. Almost all of the Ice Barrier monsters require at least themselves and one other on the field to actually have their effects, so just keep that in mind. I'm not going to reiterate it a bunch. More importantly, she allows you to discard a card and special summon an Ice Barrier tuner from your deck, but it does lock you into water monsters for the rest of the turn. The Xeno-locking in this deck is real. We really are not trying to summon anything besides water the entire time, but that's okay because water has a plethora of synchro summoning options. She also has another smaller effect where if you would pay cost for an Ice Barrier monster's effect, you can banish her from graveyard as the cost. It's a weird little effect that is only useful for really one monster, but it does come up for sure. Next up is Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier. This is kind of the glue that holds the deck together. It's a level 2 tuner that allows you to tribute another effect monster and special summon up to 3 tokens. These tokens are level 1. And if you do, this card's level is increased by the number of tokens you chose to summon. It also Xeno-locks you. So that means that this card can get you into a level 8 on its own. You summon 3 tokens, its level goes up to 5, you've got a level 8 on your hands, which is awesome, but there's other even more impressive things that this card is capable of. Anytime someone's mass generating tokens, you can be sure that something degenerate is happening. This card also, if it is sent to the graveyard from anywhere, say as material for a synchro summon, allows you to add a Ice Barrier monster from deck to hand. Next up is Hexa, Spirit of the Ice Barrier. This is a level 1 tuner that if you control another Ice Barrier monster, your opponent's monsters lose 500 attack and defense. Not terribly impressive, but much more impressive is your ability to send a level 3 or lower Ice Barrier monster from deck to graveyard and make this card's level become the same as that monster's. You are always sending Mirror Mage, almost always I suppose, because Mirror Mage then just triggers, gets you something to hand. So, what you're normally adding to hand off of Mirror Mage is Georgius, Swordman of the Ice Barrier. So, his effect is actually a pretty relevant one. It stops your opponent from activating the effects of monsters in the graveyard, so leaving him on the field is not a terrible call, especially if you know you're playing against a graveyard-centric deck. But also, as a level 6 tuner, he can special summon himself from hand for free if you have another Ice Barrier on the field, and when he is special summoned, you can summon an Ice Barrier from graveyard. So the whole basic premise of your combo is normal summon Revealer, activate Revealer, discard a card, special summon Hexa Spirit sends Mirror Mage to the graveyard, Mirror Mage adds Georgius to hand, Georgius special summons, and special summons the Mirror Mage, and you've got all 4 materials on board ready to go. And that's just a 1-card combo off of Revealer. It's really cool. But then we've got some extenders and combo pieces. So we play 2 Speaker for the Ice Barrier. Speaker's effect stops the opponent from changing battle position of defense position monsters. Terribly useless, but that's okay. We just use this card as an extender because if you control an Ice Barrier monster, it can special summon itself from hand for free. Also, after you've used it as synchro material, you can banish it from graveyard to make a level 1 token, which you can then just use as more synchro material. It's great. Then we've got just some combo pieces that we never really want to open, starting with Spellbreaker. So Spellbreaker is the one with a cost that you're banishing Revealer for, because this card allows you to once per turn send an Ice Barrier monster from hand to the graveyard to make it so neither player can activate spells until the end of your next turn as long as this monster remains face up on the field. Super powerful effect, especially considering this thing has like 2000 defense, so if you can special summon it in defense position, they can't just run over it and then activate their spells anyways. It's really difficult to get rid of this thing without spells, unless they're playing like Kashtira or something. And you don't actually have to send something from hand to graveyard because you can just banish Revealer from the graveyard instead. Again, it's a weird effect. It changes the cost from send something from hand to graveyard to banish Revealer instead. You're not always going to leave Spellbreaker on your final board, but if you get there and you can't combo anymore, or the opponent like used a Maxi or a Fulos on you and you don't really want to give them a bunch of cards, then just ending on Spellbreaker is normally a pretty good call anyways. Then we play one General Wayne of the Ice Barrier, so this thing makes it so that any spells and traps sent from field to opponent's graveyard specifically, it is not symmetrical, get banished instead. That's great because there is a lot of spells and traps running around right now that have graveyard effects. Also, if your opponent controls a monster and you have an Ice Barrier monster, you can special summon this card from hand, and if this card is normal or special summon, you can just add an Ice Barrier spell or trap from deck to hand. So it can be an extender if you're going second, but really we're trying to special summon it via other means that this deck has access to use that actual first floodgate type effect. And then our best floodgate type effect is General Raiho. So Raiho is really, really annoying because he can't special summon himself, he has no auxiliary effects, but if you can put him on the field and leave him there, your opponent has to discard a card for every monster effect that they try to resolve. If they do not discard a card, or if they cannot discard a card, the effect is negated. This is not once per turn. So that means that your opponent is on a clock. Normally they can only resolve 2 monster effects before they are completely locked out of monster effects if they have not dealt with Raiho by then. And it's not like he's a small creature, 2100 attack, 2300 defense. You put him in defense mode and just leave him there, and 2 monster effects, sometimes is not good enough to get over that. He kind of locks the opponent out of the game more often than anything else we're trying to do. Then we play 2 Ice Jade Ran Agerine. These are not technically in archetype, but the Ice Jades and the Ice Barriers kind of go together pretty well, and this one in particular allows you to discard another water monster to special summon it for free, and then special summon a level 3 token. This card is a level 7 tuner. That means you can just immediately slap the 2 into a level 10 synchro, and level 10 is the magic number, making Ran Agerine just really, really good. Then we're on to spells and traps, starting with Medallion of the Ice Barrier. So this is our archetypal Rhoda, but it is not once per turn. That means that if you, say, start with a Revealer and they interrupt your Revealer, you can use Medallion to get exactly the card you need to keep comboing in that situation. Medallion is so good, and it's the reason that this deck is capable of playing through multiple disruptions pretty easily, and you're always happy to see as many of these in an opening hand as you possibly can. Then we play 1 Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier. This allows you to special summon a level 4 or lower Ice Barrier from your graveyard, and if you have 3 or more Ice Barrier monsters, they are unaffected by activated effects of stuff that was special summoned from the extra deck. We're not normally caring about that last bit, though it is relevant in a decent number of matchups. But this is part of some combos that you can do with starters other than Revealer that just allow you to actually make the deck work, and it's an extender either way, so you're never mad to see it. We play 1 of Winds Over the Ice Barrier. This is a disgusting card that allows you to tribute any number of Ice Barrier monsters to special summon that many level 4 or lower Ice Barrier monsters with different names from your deck. That means that if you summon 3 tokens off of Mirror Mage and 1 off of Speaker, you can tribute all 4 of them to get whatever 4 Ice Barrier monsters under level 4 you want. That gets you just infinite materials, basically. It's a completely gross effect. Winds is almost always how you're going to be special summoning Spellbreaker to leave on the field. It fixes your board into exactly what you need at any given time. You can also use it to recycle an Ice Barrier monster from grave or banishment to hand on any turn besides the one that it was sent to the graveyard. We play 1 of Ice Barrier, the titular card, and this card's effect is not really what we're wanting to do. It protects you from battle if an opponent tries to attack your monster, but that's not really what you care about. You want to put this in the graveyard because you can banish it, send a level 5 water monster from deck to grave, and then add a water monster from grave to hand. That means that you can just grab back whatever you send, or you can send something that you would rather get out of your deck, or maybe has a graveyard effect. We don't have a ton of those, and then add back a card that you need to keep comboing. Oftentimes what we're doing is we're sending Georgius and then just adding Georgius, or we're sending Agerine and then adding Agerine, because it does not have to be an Ice Barrier monster, just a high-level water monster. So either of those is just an extremely good extender that we can just get off Ice Barrier. and we can discard this to the graveyard with something like Revealer's Effect. Worst case scenario, setting it and using it to protect our actual monsters from battle and negate effects and things like that is not a terrible call, we just would prefer it be in the graveyard. Which is why we play one of Foolish Burial Goods, because we're just gonna send Ice Barrier to the graveyard off of it. Simple and clean. We play a Foolish Burial itself because we can send Mirror Mage to the graveyard and do a full combo that way, and then we play 15 pieces of non-engine. The only one I'm going to actually bring up is Gozen Match. Everything we're doing is water, so we don't lock ourselves out of the game with Gozen Match. Might as well play it. Onto the extra deck. This is a Synchro deck, so most of our extra deck is taken up by its various levels of Synchro monsters. First off is Coral Dragon, which is our level 6 tuner that we can use to climb into higher level Synchro stuff. And along the way, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you get to draw a card. Sometimes you will also use its first effect to discard a card and destroy an opponent's card. It's a good going second card, it's good for climbing, it gets you extension and draws you cards. Who doesn't love drawing an extra card? Then we've got Deep Sea Prima Donna, similar thing, it is another kind of climbing to our higher levels thing, but this one, rather than drawing us a card, prevents whatever is summoned using it as material from being targeted by monster effects, so that just makes the stuff that we summon off of it harder to out. The rest of its effects are pretty much pointless. We play an Adamancipator Risen Dragite. Dragite is a spell trap negate. What more do you need to know? It's also just a big body. Its first effect is not super useful to us because we aren't playing a bunch of rock monsters, but, you know, spell trap negate is a spell trap negate. The next two are for board breaking. First up is White Aura Whale, which allows us to destroy all of our opponent's attack position monsters when it's summoned. That demands an answer, or if we can go into this after the opponent's used all of their negates and everything, they lose their entire board. It's great. It can also make up to 2 attacks each battle phase, and it does piercing damage, so it's just good for trying to close out the game. We play a Gradle Dragon, which, similar to White Aura Whale, allows us to target cards on the opponent's field and destroy them. The big difference here is that Gradle Dragon can target back row cards, but it does not blow up all of them. It has to be up to the number of water monsters used for the Synchro. Namely, this is a level 8, so if we can go into it off Mirror Mage, that is 4 cards that we get to destroy. It's great. We play a Ravenous Crocodragon Arcathus, and Arcathus is kind of really good in this deck, because if it's Synchro Summon, you can draw cards equal to the number of non-tuners you used. So it's a level 9. If you summon it using a maxed out Mirror Mage and a token off of Speaker for the Ice Barriers, which, to be fair, is best case scenario, you're not always doing that, keep that in mind, you draw 4 cards. That's absolutely completely cracked and insane, especially because you're doing it after you have thinned your deck, so you're drawing a bunch of hand traps and stuff. Awesome. But even outside of that, it also allows you to discard 2 cards and destroy a card on the field once per turn as a quick effect, so it is a disruption that also draws you anywhere from 1 to 4 cards along the way. It's really good. Then for our actual boss monsters we're trying to get to every single turn, Arcathus shows up pretty commonly but not on every board. We really want to get Gymir Agerine because this allows you to quick effect make all of your face-up monsters unable to be destroyed or banished for the rest of the turn. And then if you activated this in response to an opponent's card or effect, you can banish that card. So this just lets you protect your entire board and banish something. It's a big body, what more can you ask for? And it can be made with 1 card off of Ranagerine, so, love it. We will sometimes go into a Shinging if we can make a 3rd level 10. Sometimes that is possible in this deck. It's not always. This is our least important level 10, but it does get bigger for every card that is banished, which we do a bunch of banishing in this deck. And if it would be destroyed, you can banish a card instead, and as soon as any card is banished, it can trigger to banish a card from the opponent's graveyard and field. Banish. Then the most important card in the deck, and if you can only get to 1 Synchro monster, this is the one that you always want. Lancea is so incredibly cracked. Once per chain, when your opponent special summons a monster, you can special summon an Ice Barrier monster from hand, deck, extra deck, or graveyard, and you can change one of their attack position monsters into defense. Remember all of those little floodgate effects that we had? We can just summon them straight out of deck. So Raiho's the first one you get to immediately put your opponent on a clock and force them to answer it. And then we can grab something like General Wayne if that's going to be relevant here. Spellbreaker you can't actually use because you have to pay a cost to activate her effect, but that's okay. You can grab any of the other ones for their little effects, or you can just special summon something from the extra deck. Funny enough, this card is an Ice Mountain card, so it cannot special summon itself because it's not an Ice Barrier card. You can use its effect to summon something twice per turn. And Lancea allows you, when it is removed from the field by an opponent's monster effect, to special summon an Ice Barrier Synchro from your extra deck. This counts as a Synchro Summon. This is important because when Trishula, Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier, is Synchro Summoned, you can banish 3 cards your opponent controls non-targeting. And then if this card is destroyed, it has to be destruction in this case, you can special summon Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, which is our next card, from your extra deck, and that's treated as a Synchro Summon. And so when this card is Synchro Summoned, you can banish a card from your opponent's hand, field, and graveyard. You keeping up? Because so far, if you put a Lancea, just a Lancea on board, that gets you 2 Floodgates and 6 banishes across 3 total bodies, and it's just a nightmare for your opponent to actually try and deal with. And then we have some little utility cards. Really, this package is what we're really trying to do every single turn, and if you put a Lancea on the field, sometimes that's enough just to beat an opponent. But we can also sometimes make a number 4 Stealth Kraken. Stealth Kraken makes all monsters on the field water, and once per turn you can destroy a water monster and burn the opponent. So it is half Floodgate, half destruction, and we love that about Kraken. Personally, this is just kind of a pet card of mine. I really like Kraken. It's so cool. Then we play 1 Salamangreat Almirage because we can go into this off of Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier to do a 1-card combo with Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier. That's the only reason we play this, because sometimes we have to send a card to the graveyard to actually do effects and things. We don't care about any of its actual effects, just that it's a link one that you can make off of a Mirror Mage. Then we play a 1 of Marincess Coral Anemone. This can just special summon a water monster with 1500 or less attack from grave to the zone that it points to, which just gets you materials back in turns past the first one. It just lets you recycle stuff that you need, and we love that about her. She does not come up terribly often, but you will be glad she's in here when you need her. And that is it for the actual deck. Let's go see some combos. Alright guys, now I'm going to show you a 1.5 card combo you can do with just Revealer of the Ice Barrier and anything to discard. Medallion of the Ice Barrier does the same combo because this is our best 1-card combo, so you'll just grab a Revealer off Medallion and do this line anyways. Let's get started. So obviously you normal summon a Revealer and discard the other card to grab a Hexa Spirit of the Ice Barrier, which can send the Mirror Mage to the graveyard, which can grab us Georgius from deck. Georgius special summons himself and brings back the Mirror Mage as well, and we can go into our first 10 here, which is going to be Lancea. Mirror Mage contribute Hexa to get 3 tokens, and then all of them can be used to go into Prima Donna, and then Adamancipator Risen Dragite. So, the Dragite here is untargetable and is a spell or trap negate, and Lancea can start to put the screws on the opponent by summoning all of these various Floodgate type monsters from the deck. While this board may look a little bit flimsy, it is anything but, because Dragite's existence prevents our opponent from just imperming the Lancea and then going off anyways. That means that they have to have at least 2 pieces of spell or trap interruption to stop the Lancea before they go into any monsters or we start to get floodgates on our field. Most decks are not particularly capable of doing that, especially not before sideboarding, so this is a pretty strong end board. Cool, cool. So this combo is the reason we play Almirage in the extra deck, just in case the only piece of engine you open up is Mirror Mage. So let's go ahead and start. So we're going to normal summon the Mirror Mage and link off into Almirage, which will trigger the Mirror Mage to get Freezing Chains, which can bring back the Mirror Mage to then sacrifice the Almirage to get 3 tokens, go into Deep Sea Prima Donna, go into an untargetable Adamancipator Risen Dragite. So this is not the strongest end board, but considering you only had 1 piece of engine, that means you had 4 hand traps, called bys, things like that to work with. You should be able to put out a few disruptions on the opponent's turn, and hopefully that's good enough. So here's a fun one you can do with just Hexa Spirit that doesn't really get you too much of an end board, but it does draw you a bunch of cards in the hopes of unbricking yourself in case this was the only piece of engine that you drew. Let's get started. So we're going to normal summon the Hexa Spirit and use it to send Mirror Mage to the graveyard, which is going to grab us Georgius from deck. Georgius special summons himself and brings back the Mirror Mage so we can tribute Hexa and go into Ravenous Crocodragon. Crocodragon draws us 3 cards in the hopes of drawing an extender or something to just unbrick us in general. And failing that, Crocodragon is at least 1 disruption on his own. You see we bricked here because this game was rigged, but in most cases drawing 3 should give you some form of gas. Cool. Cool. So here's a fun one you can do with just Foolish Burial in hand. You do need a discard for this one as well, since we will go through Revealer, and this one does end on just a Lancea, which is the bulk of our interaction anyways, so sometimes that is good enough. Let's start. So we Foolish Burial a Mirror Mage. Mirror Mage lets us grab a Revealer. We can normal summon the Revealer and discard another card from hand to summon Georgius, who can bring back the Mirror Mage to tribute Georgius for only 2 tokens here. You see I went into only 2 tokens. This is one of the very few times that you actually want to do that, because otherwise you're just left with some stranded stuff on your board at the end that the opponent might be able to take advantage of. But with 2 tokens we can go into Coral Dragon and then go into Lancea. That gets us a card draw, and we have our biggest, most important end board piece anyways. And we're back with closing thoughts on our Ice Barrier deck. Really, I wanted to make this one because I don't know why more people don't play this deck. I think it's a very resilient deck with access to a good number of extenders, incredibly powerful boss monsters, and I'm kind of a sucker for strategies that lock you to some extent but still give you good options. Like, Water Synchro has a few decks that are built around that idea. So that means that we're not just making Ice Barrier stuff. If you could just make Lancea, that's still really good, but it's not as fun as the fact that we can use Ice Jade stuff. And I think Ice Jade has some of the prettiest card art in the game. It's not a terribly good deck, so you don't use it very often and no one ever sees it. So I like the fact that we get to use that. Crocodragon's a really, really strong card, especially when you can make it with 4 tokens and draw a bunch of cards, but it's kind of fallen out of favor in most decks. This deck still loves it, so you just get to use all of these powerful things. Deep Sea is not a thing that people use terribly often anymore. We get to use Prima Donna. You haven't seen Adamancipator in a while. I guess it had a resurgence in Master Duel pretty recently, but most of the time you're not seeing Dragite anymore, and we get to use it, and it's very good in this deck. Like, we just get to use all of these fun effects in water that you don't see terribly often in a deck that I think is quite competitive. Of course, it's not without its weaknesses. As a synchro deck, if people can mess with our levels, then that kind of messes us up. We also do use the graveyard a decent bit. We can actually kind of play around like a Dimension Shifter. We can also kind of play around Droll, which I think are signs of a very, very good deck, but we don't want to see either of those, and depending on what our hand is, like if we open just a Mirror Mage and we have to do the Almirage thing, then Dimension Shifter screws us completely. We are super weak to Dimension Barrier, though, because we are almost entirely doing Synchro Summoning, so that is a weakness to keep in mind. You maybe even would want to play like Crossout in your sideboard and at least 1 Dimension Barrier of your own to stop people from doing that to you. But, you know, worst case scenario, you just put a couple of things on the board and go into Kragan and call it a day. Depending if someone's trying to, for example, do Fiendsmith combo, Kragan can kind of screw up Fiendsmith combo because it makes everything water and they have to use light fiends to do their linking. So, that's important to keep in mind. It's a relevant thing that you can do even under D-Barrier. It is a single disruption and a floodgate. It's like the deck doesn't have a whole lot of like lethal weaknesses. It gets weakened by every little thing, but don't most decks. That's one of the reasons I think that it is a lot better than most people will give it credit for, because it is just really good at locking people out of the game with things like Raiho. Raiho is a completely disgusting card. You just have to actually be able to summon him, and this deck does that pretty well. So that's going to be it for this deck guide, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again soon. Cool.